Warm welcome to all of you to our True Self Talk right after our Connect with Your True Self energy session. And we're going to hear this blip in the background whenever somebody logs on. So that's all good. Julianne, Cindy, and Becky co-facilitated the session. It was a large group again. I hope you guys are all right. And many of you might not be used to sitting still or even, used to going within for this long, and this can feel uncomfortable. I'd love to hear from you guys. How did you experience the session?
I know for me, it felt like hard work. It felt like hard work, yeah. It didn't feel like it came very easily. To feel very connected, it felt kind of like a struggle.
It did, didn't it? There were some beautiful parts in this session, and when we do energy sessions, it's always a bit of a healing session, a bit of a clearing session, and a bit of a training session. So there was something about the general, allocation of time to go within. And obviously, when we have practice in that, so those of you who regularly meditate, for example, you might find it easier. But a meditation is not the exact same thing as doing an energy session. In a meditation, we often try to also physically relax and, sometimes fall asleep. In energy sessions, it's okay if we fall asleep if there is someone whom you trust, like an energy coach, who conducts the session. But this particular type of energy session here, there's all different kinds of energy session. Connect with your true self, right? That's an active engaging. That's an active thing that you need to do. All right. And so while every session, just like meditation, have a relaxation part, it's kind of important to stay present with the sensations that you have in your body, the emotions that are coming up in you, the thoughts that you're hearing in your head, the beliefs, the overall sort of attitude toward yourself or the world. And of course, if you have training in that, also maybe pay attention to how energies move. And we all are a little different in what we prioritize, and what we feel first. I remember a time where I would not be able to differentiate that at all. I could only tell if, like Becky said, if something was sort of easy and kind of in a flow, or if something was kind of hard for me to stay focused. Later, I realized that it's a very complex composition in us that determines how this goes. All right. And this time, and this is something that I would recommend to all of you, no matter where you're at, that you observe your own energy, where it goes before the session even starts. There is something, and many of you know this, I report about this in those energy updates and also the energy talks, that we call like a weather condition, like an energetic weather condition. And we are still right in the middle of full moon energies that are very, very powerful this time around. Yeah, so every full moon has kind of like its own characteristics. But this one in particular, in conjunction with some of the collective events that are going on, triggers a specific kind of resistance in us. Now, what were some of these resistances? Did anybody feel something similar to what Becky just shared? It felt like hard work. That's one way of describing resistances. Any other kind of, I don't know, impulses or things that you've noticed within yourself, like maybe lots of thinking, like thinking about your to-do list for tomorrow, or perhaps kind of feeling like a physical agitation. what are some of these resistances that you felt here in this session? Does anybody want to describe how that internal feeling was? What was your state
Hi,
before
Jona.
we started? Hey there, Cheryl.
How are you? So I am particularly tired today.
Okay.
Uh, which in a way is always good for me when I do like a transmission because my mind is more silent. But before the transmission, I literally was like going into my people pleasing mode. I was a little bit
Mm-hmm.
late because a friend called and um, I instead of just telling her I had something to do, I stayed on the phone too long.
Oh,
So I just was, yeah,
this
right.
is
I was
my
just
day today.
noticing myself. Yeah, just like I mean, it's just I don't know. It's partially me and it's just partially a bad habit, But
Mm-hmm.
that's how I entered. But for me, this time the session was, I would call it sweet. It felt
Mm,
sweet. It felt smooth,
okay.
and there wasn't a lot that happened, but it
Mm-hmm.
just felt sweet. That's how I would describe it.
This people pleasing aspect that you just mentioned, Cheryl, yeah,
Yes,
is that something that you obviously were aware of it? Otherwise, you couldn't really report about it like this. So I
yes,
like that, right? So you
yes,
you 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 noticed it real time, basically, right, as you
correct.
were doing it, and perhaps even because you have a name for it, which typically means that you've already reflected about it. So you know this part of you, this
Yes, I
part of
do.
you. And this is actually exactly what we picked up on. Is this? It's a mixture of frustration, yeah, and impatience, and like kind of it's also a tiredness, a psychological tired, like like kind of being a little frustrated with ourselves there. Yeah, this is what we picked up
Yes,
as one of the general themes for this session. Yeah, it's like
yes,
maybe it's because of this endless grind that we experience, or things aren't moving forward at all, they're not changing, or we're kind of tapping into something that we've been carrying around with us for like ever, kind of this drag, you know, that is something maybe you didn't feel it as strongly, because it sounds like, when it feel like to me, that you have already worked with this. But from understanding what the problem is to actually taking the steps, or actually, attacking the very thing here, yeah, that needs to be changed. Yeah, in those moments, like online, right? This is an online thing. As soon as we have the awareness, as soon as we reflect about something, we can detect it. And that's cool that you could, all right? But from there to taking the action step, right? And actually changing something, there can be quite a bit of time between, I mean, not in the moment, but I mean, like in general, like it could be years in between. I mean, when did you become aware of this trait of yours, that you have a sort of a people pleasing kind of tendency, and that it's hard for you to say no, say? Does that match up with
yes,
how you felt? It was just you, because you probably wanted to talk with the friend, right?
yes.
Just not
That
right now.
correct. And so that's an interesting question. Not that long ago, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. But when you're saying all of this, so I uh, I'm coming up against a few old patterns recently. Like, and it's interesting because I thought I conquered them, but they appeared again, like boom, boom, boom.
Hmm.
So you actually helped me a lot. You one time you said to me, I don't know, a while back, like just do something different when when the same pattern appears, do something different. So I did that in the moment, and it did change something, but the patterns haven't changed. So I realized that somehow, some way, I'm still attracting that. So I haven't figured out my strategy
Okay.
100% yet, but a
Okay.
lot of it has to do with people pleasing. And I guess the bottom line is all of them sort of have the same theme at the end. It's bait and switch. You know, once something is promised, something is presented, and then something else shows up. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
call it, like, if it's a person, I call it person A, all of a sudden person B shows up. In the job, it's, oh, we want you to do almost double for the same pay. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. I'm like, wow,
So
I've
you
been
think
here before.
have
Yeah.
you are you saying this because you kind of realizing that that this is part of the pattern, that there
Yes.
is sort of a
Yes.
disappointment at the end, that like whatever it is that you were hoping to get from it,
Whatever
yeah,
is promised does not
isn't coming.
correct. I mean, it's verbally promised. It's, you know, like it, in the job thing, I actually took fabulous notes because I'm like, I want to be spot on here so that if anything comes up, I have a leg to stand on here. And yeah, it's just bait and switch, you know, like, and then a couple other, you know, relationships in my life. So I say,
I was just going to say, right, this happens in relationships too, and sometimes
yes,
it's not, you know, like verbally said, or you know, written in a contract or job description. Sometimes it's just simply implied, right?
yes. And I used to take responsibility for them too. Just up until a few years ago, I used to somehow feel responsible for their behavior, but I realized I'm not at all, you know, and
Nice.
not, you know, I'm not, like, I don't feel like a saint or an angel, but I am integral, and, you know, I'm pretty clear on my word, so I want that back, and so I am breaking this pattern, bottom line, and it's appearing. It's almost like the universe, like, you know, giving me plenty of opportunity. And to
Uh-huh.
be honest with you, I haven't completely figured out my strategy yet, but I'm working on it.
But
Yeah.
Cheryl, I tell you what, I mean, right here, okay, you are presenting, you know, everything that you experience as problematic, or as still as something that you're still working on, with some clarity. It looks like that you have found a bunch of puzzle pieces already, okay?
Hmm.
Just not the let's say the momentum to actually change it. What do you think? And I'm doing this on purpose because you're spot on here, Gerald. This is something that we've experienced throughout this session. It has to do with, well, you called it responsibility. I want to call it accountability. Yeah,
Yes.
like the accountability with myself. And
Yes.
what am I taking responsibility for? What am I not taking responsibility for? Has to do with accountability. Which parts are my parts and which parts are the other parts, right? Like
Yes.
in job, it's simple. Okay, if somebody employs you and promises you a certain pay for a certain amount of work, right, then that's clear cut,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
sometimes it's not that clear cut. Sometimes you are being sold, you know, sort of a potential. Yeah, like, oh, you can make in sales jobs, this is a lot, right?
Yes.
You can make up to like 66 figure income,
Yes.
you just do the program or something, and then you do, and you hustle and you try, and you never get past like even remotely close to that. And it's kind of like, it gives you the feeling that you're not good enough and that you have to do harder and that you have to sacrifice more. In relationship, this is even more complex. Okay, but all patterns that have to do with people pleasing, that have to do with avoiding confrontation, so that's a key element here for you and all of you who have problems with that. There is an avoidance of that confrontation. Yeah, it's one thing if you're not aware of it, but it's another thing if you're aware of it but you're still not doing anything. Can you follow me? Yeah, it's a huge difference, right? Like
And
people,
yeah, I do not like confrontation at all. That is true.
no,
Yeah.
and so that's then the part that needs to be addressed. It is not about them, about the job, about the blah, about the no. It's about the whole process of change or betterment, if you will, get stuck in that point. That's where you get stuck. As simple as that. Okay. So if you want a strategy, and this is something that you can all take to heart, look at the part that you resist the most. Now, the session was also about how to get there. Okay. So Cheryl, you come in here with a certain level of reflection already that you have been doing like for 4 years. So that's, quite some time, but it is, just so you know, quite realistic. This is what I see in my practice. It takes that long. Yeah, it's one thing, obviously, if you realize that a certain activity or whatever produces a negative outcome and you can change that right away. Yeah, but it's another thing if you're uncovering sort of the hidden truths in yourself, the things that the unconscious, the things that you're not fully aware of. And then there's a certain time that we all need to have that sink in, and then we have to realize, wait. Yes, exactly, Cindy. One question that came up for Cindy here during this session was, why am I still doing this? You're going to have to gain clarity about that too. Because in order to form a strategy, Cheryl, you need to know why you're still doing it. What's in it for you? What are you getting out of it? And not only that, and this is closer to what this session was actually about, is it even worth it for me? Does it even matter to me? Is that really something important to me that I am willing to compromise my integrity? Yeah, or compromise my integrity sounds so dramatic, but kind of letting myself down or neglecting my own needs or my own desires or not speaking up for what is rightly mine or something along those lines. Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves, why am I still doing this? And not as in like, why are you doing this? No, as in like, wait a minute. Why am I still doing that? Because guess what, guys? And this is part of our true self connection. And actually, the true self, if you want to picture it this way, is the one that needs to be asked. It's exactly the right person. Not a person, obviously, but you know what I mean, right? To give you that answer. What am I getting out of this? And in your case, if I may use you here as as volunteer, yeah, he said that that you have this fear of confrontation. Yeah, that this is part of what's holding you back.
And like with the
We need
job,
to
so
ask.
yeah, so I have like with the job, actually it was literal bait and switch. I took the job mostly but the pay was good enough, and one of my priorities is that I would have more free time for my grandchildren.
Okay.
So that was
Okay.
promised, and certain time off. They did not care the hours I worked, as long as I fulfilled certain duties. But then last week it was, you have to put in at least 40 hours, 4 10-hour days, which I am not capable of doing. By the third day, I am exhausted. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason I'm still there right now is just because I haven't landed something better. But
Okay.
almost from the very beginning, they have pushed the boundaries. Like almost every week, they'll be like, "Hey, can you work Friday?" No, because I take my granddaughter Friday. And then, "Hey, can you do?" No, because I have a class.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I would say, well, I don't want to lose my nanny job, but I also am not going to compromise these things. But then when last week happened, it was like push came up against shove, and I'm like, well, the truth is I mean, I could be okay for a while without the
Mm-hmm.
money, but it would be difficult, and I've
Okay,
been
right
in
here.
difficult
Right
before.
here. Okay. So this is how your mind goes. Your mind goes like, if I go into confrontation, I might lose the job. Right?
I think I would. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and I agree with you, most likely, or depends on how that. I mean,
Right.
confrontation sounds so big, but stepping up for your boundaries isn't or doesn't necessarily have to lead to a huge dramatic thing. It can just be like, no,
Yes.
unfortunately, I can't. Okay. The point is
Yes.
that you say switch and bait, and that is a bait and switch. So bait and switch. There is there's a view behind that, and that view is that you feel like a victim, that you were made false promises. And I can tell you
Well,
that I've been
it's
talking
so
about this
I
whole
so when you
subject.
say that, so it's interesting because I say in my own head almost every single solitary time, I refuse to feel like the victim. Like I refuse to
Mhm.
be the victim. So I don't feel like a victim because I could walk away. But like I
Mhm.
say, based upon my past experience, I asked a lot of questions. I went on 2 interviews and I took great notes. So I'm not, I wasn't crazy. But they
Mhm.
really did change the rules. But am I
Mhm.
a victim? No, because I could leave. It's just right now, I mean, and every friend I have is telling me to walk. But, it's like, well, but I'd be giving up the money, so
All right.
am I
So
studying? No.
that answers the question, what you're getting out of it. Okay.
Yes.
So you're getting money out of it, and that is what you want to maintain. And now comes the
Yes.
most important question, and that is the one that we were confronted with here in this session, maybe through several different layers that each and every one of you experienced. But that is, okay, is it worth it? And when you use terms such as bait and switch, promises not held, boundaries pushed, you are portraying yourself as a victim, Cheryl, because that in the language itself includes or implies that something is being done to you.
But
And
all of
that,
that is true. Do you know what I
I
mean? Like,
know,
but
but it's not the point. It's not the point. I believe
yes,
you. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's not the point, though.
yes,
It actually makes the point even more so for you to speak up
I know.
because it's
However,
true. Yeah,
right.
because it's true.
Yeah.
So
All
right
right.
there.
Yeah, so I did say, well, hey, when you interviewed me, this is what
Mhm.
you promised, and
Okay.
and she said, well, this is what we need now.
Okay. So that's okay too, because everybody has the right to have changed needs and changed situations,
Right,
right? And then it's up
right,
to
right,
you. Then it's up to you to choose, yeah, to decide whether you can live with it or not.
right.
So
I hear
in
you.
relationships, this happens a lot. But yes, things can change, and yes, people have limitations. Yes, I have limitations too. Life isn't about me, eradicating all limitations or, denying that there are any. Life is about making the right choices. When you say to your partner, hey, I really don't like how you, I don't know, um, throw your laundry on the ground, okay? And your partner says, well, but that's what I do. I hear this all the time. In fact, that gets me angry every time I hear this. That's how I do it. I'm not going to change it. Okay, fine. People have the right to say that. It's still disrespectful. It's still doing that. Whose problem is it now? It's your problem because you're going to have to choose whether you're okay with it or not, whether you can let it go or whether you want to bitch and moan about it every single time it happens. You can also join. I'm not saying that you should. I'm not judging any of this. Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about, Jill. But it's about the responsibility aspect, as you have already identified. For them, it's just, yeah, well, but that's what we need. We are the ones paying, so, we can replace you. If you don't want to do this, then we find somebody else. It's true. So you're going to have to ask yourself if it's worth it for you, what you're getting out of it. Because in your life experience and your life wisdom, you already know where this is going, right? Where is this going? So
It never has gotten better.
no.
And that's,
And
I guess
it will
that's
probably get
so,
worse. It will probably get worse. Like you
right,
said,
and
that's a pattern that you've noticed in yourself, right? That it will get,
right,
that it
and
kind of like ends up becoming unbearable.
correct. So, you know, when you say like the victim, like part of it is just like my, you know, like I feel a little stubborn about because I don't ever want to be the victim ever. But I, you know, what I feel mostly like is disappointment. You know, it's like that, like, oh, well, this is
Yeah, but
disappointing. I thought this,
that's
you know,
victimhood as well. So maybe maybe
mm,
we're talking about different definitions of victimhood. But victimhood is when you're passive. Yeah, and when
yeah,
you know an
yeah.
account, it can come in different forms. It can come in forms of resentment. It can come in forms of disappointment. It can, but it always implies that you can't do anything about it, and that is the
Well,
error perception. A victim
here's
cannot
the
do
part.
anything about what is happening to it,
Mm,
but someone
I
who
don't,
is
yeah,
standing in their true self can. And you know
right.
that you
I hear
can at
you.
all times because you need to make a choice based on what you need and what you want. That needs to be your first priority.
I get scared. You know what I mean? Like that's what happens. I get scared because even though I believe it, because I've had, I guess, experience that things do work out if I make a good choice. You know, part of me gets scared. Like, Cheryl, just do the right thing for you. Because I've said all along, well, I don't want to lose my job, but I'm also not going to
Yeah.
compromise.
Well,
But
I, t-
when that
I
happened, I compromised. You know,
right,
I didn't even
and
keep
so
going
it's your
over to
choice.
resolve.
Right
Right.
there, you see it. You
Right.
choosing to stay, and right there is where you have to confront yourself with a uncomfortable truth, namely that
Yes.
I'm not discussing with you whether their behavior is okay or not. Obviously, I know exactly the situation that you describe, and I, agree with you that it's not okay. But whose responsibility is it to walk out of a situation that is not okay? They are probably going to get away
Right.
with it, and if you don't do the job, they'll find somebody else who needs the money more, who is more willing to compromise. Are you going to change them? No. The point being that when you want to be true with yourself, you have to be willing to look at that. Why you're compromising. And that's what you're going to have to ask yourself, if that's okay with you. In relationships, I always tell people, ask yourself if you could, if you can live with this forever. You know, like assuming it's never going to change.
Yeah,
Yeah?
that's a
It's the
great way to
easiest,
put
the
it. Yeah.
fastest way to get there. It's the fastest way to get
Yeah.
there. Asking yourself, can I live
Yeah.
with this forever? And you already know that you can't. Okay.
Mhm.
What's the point in dragging this out?
I agree.
It's,
I
yeah.
hear you.
Now,
Yeah.
I do want to say one more thing, and this is more the energetic and also a bit more the spiritual perspective about this. This came in for all of you guys in this session. It was literally a sentence. I don't hear sentences in this sort of verbal, acoustic way very often. I'm not very auditorily inclined, but this session was very, very strong. This is how that went, that phrase. If this is not enough to show you that you don't want it, what will? If where you are at and what you're experiencing and what you're resisting or disliking right now, if this is not enough for you to make a new or different choice, what will? How far does it have to go until you will make the step that you already know you need to make? And right there, you'll find something. There is a setup going on with yourself, namely waiting till it becomes so unbearable that you really look like a victim. Yes, to a degree, Julianne, it's like ourselves against ourselves, but it's obviously more complex than that. It has to do with how we want to see ourselves. It's our image, our pride, And obviously the combination with fear, and I do not minimize you know, the necessity sometimes, so you know that you have to do jobs or you have to do things that are against your own integrity. That does happen. But when you make those choices, you better make them consciously and make sure that there's a beginning and an end to it. Yeah, so this is always how I keep this in check with myself. There are sometimes times where we have to do things that we don't really want to do, but we can see that it's only a temporary thing. Like, you know, all kinds of things in families, you have this all the time, you know, that there are situations sometimes where you have to step up, or, you know, you have to do things that you would normally not do, but it has to be done for some time. And by setting yourself a beginning and an end, like making an agreement with yourself and say, okay, I'm going to look at this for another month. Okay. But I'm not just going to sit there and wait in that month. I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to look at the track record. Are they changing something? And if they're not changing, then I can walk out. I can feel free of guilt or whatever else, you know, may bother me about, you know, a lot of us have issues with commitment. You know, we made a commitment and we don't want to let other people down. We don't realize when that contract, that original commitment contract, isn't even being honored anymore. Okay, that's something that always has to go two ways. But let's say you're not sure, you know, you do know that you're more or less being taken advantage of right now, right? Or it's not like they don't pay you for it, right, Cheryl? You still get paid, but it is that the minimum amount of hours that are being expected from you are way above what you had agreed to originally, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So it's not they're not paying you. You know, there's
Yeah.
people who are in a situation like you and they don't get paid for that work. Yeah, so that's even more obvious. Yeah, but in your case, it's a matter of preferences and what you you know, try to establish as your boundaries. Okay, and every time you violate your own boundary, okay, you're gonna have to understand that that, you know, sort of flows back to your true self as you letting yourself down. Yeah, and the reason why we then end up having a difficult connection or a difficult relationship with our true self is because, and you can hear this in your own head, I'm not saying that you do, Cheryl, but many of us do, you know, you hear this voice that says, well, you know, you don't really want to be that way, but that's not really who I am. Yeah, or you know, we were kind of trying to sugarcoat it, or, you know, like all forms of denial. Yeah. So Julianne, it's not against ourselves, but it's like where we're not true with ourselves. And after 10 years of doing these Connect with Your True Self sessions, guys, I can tell you that the fear number one that people have when they go into the Connect with Your True Self session is that they discover or have to look at things that they don't like about themselves. And that creates a huge resistance here that kind of distracts us from the clarity that is actually needed for us to move forward, to change it. Okay, it's totally okay. We can maintain our integrity if we make a compromise as a conscious choice. If you say to yourself, all right, I see this family is going through stuff and they need extra help, and you know, it's going to last for another month and then we can go back to normal. That's totally okay, right? Because now you're agreeing to something that you've accepted. But truth is that when outer conditions change to a place where it's clear that those conditions aren't going to change back, then we have to renegotiate. We have to revisit our commitment. And the first step really in that process is to actually ask ourselves to reflect on it within ourselves. The habit here that you are up against, the pattern that you're up against, Cheryl, is that there's a part in you that believes that you're a victim. And even though you say you don't want to be a victim, well, it doesn't matter if you want to be a victim or not. That is part of why you can't see it. It's part of that blind spot. Yes, you are right. You can walk out, but you don't. Just like with the vaccines, right? Where they will all say, well, you had a choice. But did we really? Yeah, so when we are being coerced, for example, or when our fears are being played with, like an employer-employee situation, that's often the case. Yeah, if there is this sort of, if you don't do this, then you're going to lose your job. Okay, it makes us become more passive. But this is the part here in conjunction with our connection with true self that we have to answer. We have to answer that to ourselves. Is it worth it? Is that compromise that you're making there, is that the right thing? I've had a similar situation today, and I don't want to bore you with my stories, but I just want to say, that, like, as an example, how you can do this in your inner dialogue and connection with your true self. Right when I was ready to leave and I had to be there at a certain time, my brother calls. I haven't spoken to my brother in 3 months or 4 months, and he just had a motorcycle accident. And I was so happy to hear from him, all right, that in that moment I was just like, oh no, not right now, because I needed to get ready to leave, right? But at the same time, well, my phone was dying. That was the problem. So I couldn't really take him with me. I had to like be on my computer to talk to him. And in that moment, I knew that I was making a compromise. I knew that I would be running late. And I said to myself, it's okay. Talking to my brother is worth it. But after 5 minutes, I told my brother, I said, honey, I really got to go. I do want to talk with you more, but right now I can't. Can I call you back later? So while all this seems too simple, right? Sometimes it's just all it takes. Yeah. And in job situations, I hear this every day. All right, you're going to have to make a choice. And that's then how we break through patterns. Yeah, we close that door that is definitely keeping us in restriction or in limitation. We have to stop it. We have to disrupt it. And obviously there's a fear of the unknown. There's a fear of what happens after that. And that fear needs to be conquered with trust in ourselves. But the only way to gain trust in ourselves is actually if we're true with ourselves. Otherwise, we can't really trust that we can handle this or that we can form a strategy that will work. And that's, where the dog chases its own tail. That's where we have to step in with a conscious choice and say, you know what, no matter what, okay, this is not something I can live with. This is not something I will endure for the rest of my life. I don't care if it throws me into poverty or whatever temporary discomfort. Yeah, you don't even have to make it like a generalized thing. You can just say to yourself, I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah, because I'm violating my own trust in myself each and every time I agree with things or I stay passive because I become silently complicit. And it becomes more and more difficult for me to justify that for myself. Yeah, and harder for me to trust in my own truth. And guess what? That's why we have so much trouble with truth, because there's a part of us that lies to ourselves. Yeah, because we want to hold up some kind of image or some kind of projection, some kind of how we want others to see us. And that was the main healing process here in the session, guys. And it started out quite physical in the beginning. So at first there was a big, like, sort of, yeah, because right before the session, the energies were very, very agitated, almost angry, disappointed, or, sort of anticipatory, like, uh-oh, like, but there was a lot of, like, say, resistance, a lot of disarray right before session, even if it was just haste. And then came this initial relief, so that didn't last very long. Yeah, and then came the distraction. Yes, and then came the frustration. And then came the whininess, the victimhood, the passivity. And then, and this was roughly right at 45 minutes in, something happened. Did anybody notice a shift to the last 15 minutes of the session? I'm curious. Anybody notice something? I mean, maybe you fell asleep, or, maybe, you've had enough, but there was a shift and something happened there in your energy field, namely that your inner vision, yeah, your third eye opened up. There was something like a click, and all of a sudden, there was higher levels of clarity. There was an ability there to see the bigger picture. Yes, Chris Gamer, yes. And you got up as if you were tired of waiting. Yes. Yeah, so sometimes it can come in as a physical impulse, that's it. Like, I'm not taking that, or I'm doing something. I'm shifting my energy. Okay? Or it Janelle. Hi, Janelle. Yeah, I didn't know that was you. Or it was something that makes you finally sort of surrender and say, okay, no matter how I twist or turn it, no matter how I look at it, what perspective, it's not okay. And so I really have to step into that agency, into my agency. That's a psychological term, meaning you have to step into your own stance and say, this is not okay for me. And you don't have to do this with anger, but unfortunately, guys, this is in our psychology. Yeah, this is the nature of our ego, is that we often use anger to burst things open. Cindy, how did you say that? To crack the crust? Something like that. Yes, and Justine, to come back to your comment, you said you tired of, how did you word this? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Resistance to living. Yeah, kind of like that was the feeling that I tried to describe in the beginning, this drag. Everything is just like, like a grind. Yeah, and it's really, really important that we realize what these components in us are that are, well, to a degree facilitating it, to a degree actually, where we are complicit with it. And anger is a beautiful tool because the frequency of anger is higher than fear. But a lot of times that anger energy that could be used to set boundaries, to enforce boundaries, to speak up, to stand your own ground, kind of gets watered down because we are feeling guilty. We are feeling, we feel this inner impulse where we kind of know, yeah, that we're playing a part in this. And because we're not aware of how and when and why, all right, we are then sort of just feeling bad about being angry. And then the anger usually turns toward ourselves. Yeah, we become angry at ourselves. Yeah, so we're disappointed and then we get frustrated, impatient. Yeah, then we typically project it onto someone or something, like a blame. Okay. And right there, guys, I mean, if there was anything that I could teach you, or, I mean, I'm not really giving advice, but, something that I want you to pay attention to. When you catch yourself blaming, your state or your experience or your whatever onto somebody else. I want you to stop right there. Ask yourself, how did I get into the situation that I make somebody else responsible for my life? That's backwards, guys. I don't need to blame anyone, and I don't need to blame circumstances or the weather conditions onto anything. The weather conditions do sometimes play into this, and yes, other people sometimes contribute to things. But there is no need to blame. So whenever, I like how you said this, Justine, like looking at the root cause. When you want to look at the root cause of something, be honest. Nobody else caused you to be in the situation that you're in. Yes, other people may have contributed, or the outer conditions may have made it harder for you to break free. But they haven't caused anything. And even if it's just because you didn't change it earlier, or because you didn't speak up earlier, what I'm saying is that we're not, this is not, I'm not saying that you're responsible for your own, life's experiences. To some degree we are, but we're here, as consciousness seekers, as consciousness trainers or trainees. And what you need to understand, is that blaming is a cop-out. Blaming is the opposite of stepping into your own true self-connection. Blaming is stepping out of that connection. Because every single time you make somebody else responsible, something else, it can also be an energy or what entity, whatever it is, on whichever level, physical, emotional, intellectual, social, spiritual, or etheric level. Whenever you do this, you're giving that entity or that person the power to do that to you. Now let me ask you again, is it worth it? Are you really subscribing to that? Is that what you're standing for? That's how you address this with yourself. Obviously, I didn't mean to ask you in this direct way as an outer person. I'm not your judge. No, I was trying to model to you how you have to step into that relationship, that connection with yourself, and ask yourself that. So the point being here that the only way how you can actually form a deeper connection with your true self, and ultimately, a deeper form of say inner peace, or not a deeper form, but like feel okay with who you are and where you're at, is by stepping into truth with yourself, just like in relationships. Because if you're not even clear about what your priorities are, why you're doing things, what your needs are, what your no-goes are, what your boundaries are, not to mention if you're not clear about enforcing them, okay, there cannot be clarity about anything. You don't even know who you are then. And if there's no clarity, there's no truth. And if there's no truth, you don't see that you have the freedom to choose. And that's why blaming is always a good indication, because when you have no freedom to choose, which is equivalent to our victim attitude, we start to blame. We start to externalize the problem. It's an indicator for you when you're lying to yourself, when you're not true with yourself. And when there is no truth in that relationship with yourself, there cannot be love, guys. And this is the reason why we have so much difficulties with our true self relationship, with ourself, being real with ourself. Because we're not really in truth with ourselves. So this time right now, and especially this full moon, guys, brings in an opportunity to do that. And how is it doing this? Through the agitation, the disappointment, the frustration, the tiredness, the agitation, the resentments, and the anger. And it's your job now to choose whether you're okay with that or not. And if you're not okay, there's no backpedaling, guys. There's no toe dipping. You're going to have to act accordingly. And yes, you can negotiate. So depending on what it is in relationships, I'd always suggest that you go back and renegotiate and say, you know what, honey, things have changed a little bit for me. And I didn't realize or didn't see this before, but now I realize how important it is for me to blah, 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 blah. You fill in the blanks. And therefore, I would like to renegotiate this with you. I would like to, maybe make some changes here and there. Whether it's the way you fold the laundry or, how we've been doing this with the kids or who brings the money home or whatever. If it's a new job, yeah, so many things have changed here in these last 2 years, and many, many more things will change in the next years to come. All right, you have the right to state that. That would be the truest thing to say with yourself. Is, whoa, things have changed, and these last 2 years have showed me what truly matters to me, what I truly need, what I truly want. And you have the right to say that and to say, things have changed for me. And I need to renegotiate. I need to revisit this. I need to change my commitment now based on that. That's how you can maintain truth with yourself. You don't have to be perfect and you don't have to have it figured out. As a matter of fact, if you've listened to the last energy talk from yesterday, I actually point out what you should go by. You should go by your heart. Because by what truly matters to you, that there's a feedback that you get from the inside, and it signals to you what brings you joy, what brings you fulfillment, what is deeply, deeply moving for you. Yeah, that's unchanging, guys. That's something that actually doesn't change over your lifetime that much. Yeah, and being in truth with yourself helps you to gain the clarity, helps you to claim the freedom, yeah, to put this into action, and also gives you the courage to put this out, to say it, or to, express it to whom it concerns. But beware of your ego externalizing the problem, blaming others, the government, COVID, blah, 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 your husband or your girlfriend, making them responsible for things that you want to change but cannot change is an ego cop-out, guys, right there. And that's what the deeper relationship with your true self can help you with, can help you detect that. And then you're going to have to get over your pride, because in that moment, it's a bit uncomfortable at first. You realize that you've kind of been lying to yourself or, avoiding looking there, and it's okay. All you really need is to say, whoa, I didn't see this before. I didn't understand the meaning of this before. But now that I do, things have changed in me. And now I have to take the action steps, yeah, to change this in the physical, in the 3D. Now I have to make, changes one step at a time. You don't have to have a full worked out strategy yet. You just need to stand up for what truly matters to you, what truly moves you, what has meaning for you. And in that moment, you'll find the motivation and the courage, yeah, to do this. That's how your deeper connection with your true self can help you, to, on one hand, to gain more clarity, but on the other hand, also to become more authentic and more powerful in your manifestation process. Yeah, this is obviously a lot of monologuing here, and you can tell that the energies, like just by my presentation, were quite intense. So there's an intensity there, and my suggestion for you is that you use this intensity, use your frustration, guys. Write down all the stuff that are frustrating you. Write down all the stuff that you're disappointed about. Write it down, work with it, or say it, share it with someone. And then catch yourself every single time you're formulating a sentence that starts with, oh yeah, and that's because of him or her or this or that. Now catch that right there. You're giving up your power to change it. Now there's nothing wrong with sort of neutrally assessing that, like I just did a few minutes ago, and I said, through COVID, a lot of things changed. But I'm not saying that it's responsible for my misery or for my challenges. All I'm saying is, oh yeah, the weather has changed. It's raining now, okay? Whereas yesterday it was sunny and warm. Yeah, I can neutrally state that the outer conditions have changed. But all that really means is that we have to adapt. And the better our connection with our true self, yeah, the easier it is for us to see what needs to be changed. But this session was about you really feeling into it and working with your frustrations, yeah, because they can help you to set boundaries, to set and enforce boundaries. And right now, this seems to be the biggest issue for all of you. Any questions, guys? Or last comments before I let you go? Cindy, would you like to say a few words into your mic, into the mic? Oh, did you find the mic? I like
I
your
thought
last.
it was actually under the chat, like the old webinar software. So I was scrambling to try and find it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot find it.
So you said I used to get pissed at people for putting me in the position to where I had to confront a situation.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was my classic victimhood go-to.
Of
And I
course.
really honestly felt that, like within myself, why would they put me in that position? Now I have to do something about it, and that would get me all riled up and all, not in a good place. And
No,
once
because you're dealing with all your inner resistances now, right?
exactly.
You could, and this is the thing that I would suggest to everybody listening here. You could change your perspective on this, and you could feel gratitude for people putting you into that place.
Yes, see, I can
And
see
even
that now.
yeah, or karma, for instance. You can say, or Cheryl said something about, like, she doesn't know why she keeps attracting it. That there's a resistance in that statement. Just say, oh, I get it now why I keep attracting it, because I'm not changing anything. Okay, so it keeps coming back to me, and in that moment of awareness, you can if you're willing to stand in truth with yourself, feel gratitude. You can say, okay, I get it now. Yeah, I get it now. Thanks for showing me this. Okay, you
Well,
don't
and the
have to
really
say
cool
it.
thing in the session that came with all of us, working through the questions was just asking the question, why am I still doing this? You don't even necessarily have to have a fix right then, but
Yeah,
once
not
you,
in a guilty kind of way, right?
yeah,
Not yeah.
exactly. And then just kind of follow that, you know, you call that reverse engineering, you may come up with something or not, but just even talking about it or writing it down, like you said, really helps to shift the energy.
I have these inner dialogues every day, guys. if I bump up against something that rubs me the wrong way, the first question I am asking myself is, what is rubbing me the wrong way? And then I'm asking myself, why is it rubbing me the wrong way? And then I'm asking myself, why do I keep staying here even though it's rubbing me the wrong way? What am I getting out of it? Because sometimes it is, but life is complex. And until I, when I can give myself an answer that says, I am here because, let's see, I see the greater good. I see the greater purpose in this. I am doing this because I'm following my inner vision or something along those lines, right? Because sometimes a higher goal can mean that you have to go through resistances for some time. For as long as I, can answer these questions with, okay, I'm doing this for a higher goal, I'm okay. But if I answer this with, well, that's because, I don't want to do something else that I truly need to do or want to do. I want to avoid something else or blah, 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 blah. There's many, many reasons why I keep staying or why I choose to stay in a situation that is actually upsetting me or rubbing me the wrong way. And it's only until I become aware of my true intentions that I can actually work with it. And this is something that does take some time, guys. Yeah, this is why, I've been doing this true self session now for over 10 years every month. And, I know many of you come regularly, and I love this because this relationship needs to be nurtured. This needs to be trained. Yeah, this isn't something that will build, when you just go there like once a month. Have you ever tried to, conduct a relationship with only meeting 60 minutes once a month? Good luck. Yeah, that relationship isn't going to last very long because there's not enough exchange or direct or conscious exchange. Now, meditation can help us with facilitating the space for that. We discussed this during the session as well, right, Cindy? But there is something about that in these connecting with your true self sessions. Yeah, that's actually just sort of the practice. It's just a foreplay. This is something that you should more or less do with yourself. I don't know, several times a day at least, to check in with yourself in this way. Yes, and prioritizing this, and it's not even just about that. It's, you don't have to like take 60 minutes for that. You can just all you need to do is cultivate this kind of investigative, okay, what is it that I'm doing? What is it? How does this make me feel? What am I getting out of doing that? Yeah, and why do I keep doing it even though it's not good for me? And there is a bunch of other questions that come with that, namely along those lines. If you want to go a step deeper, what's the fear underneath it? Or is there an unmet need, yeah, that I'm trying to compensate with by doing this? Yeah, people pleasing, what is that? Is there a fear underneath? Yeah, maybe there's the fear of rejection underneath it. Okay, then I have to work with the rejection. Is there the need to present a certain image or a certain projection of myself to others? Then I have to work with that. What is that image that I'm trying to present to other people? For what purpose? What am I getting out of this? What am I hoping to get back? Is it worth it? These kind of things, those are the kind of self-investigatory questions that we have to cultivate with ourselves. Otherwise, you have no chance to stand your ego, because your ego seeks pleasure and avoids pain. Yeah, so it will work directly against your efforts to change something. Your ego wants to maintain, it wants to keep everything the way it is. Your ego is not there to make you happy. Your ego is only there to keep you alive. And so we got to ask ourselves what it is that we're trying to hold on to or trying to maintain, and if that's worth it. More self-talk. Yes, Jona. Yes, exactly. And like I said, it doesn't have to be in an energy session. You can do this with yourself. You can set aside 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. Yeah, that's right. It's awfully quiet and passive without that. That's it. That's a wonderful takeaway for this session. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Becky and Julianne, for being the co-facilitators. If you have listened to this and you were in the session, and you can always ask questions later in the forum. You can also share and just let us know how the session felt for you, or what your takeaways are. Yeah, so the interaction here with myself and the co-facilitators continues after session in the forum. Yeah, and if you watching this as part of what we do here at transCODES, know that there's a bunch of programs that I have that you can learn, where you can learn to do this on a regular basis, and where I teach you techniques that allow you to see those things quicker and more effectively. Also, obviously then in the translation process, namely, to make effective changes. Yeah. So that's what I do. And if you would like to have a free initial energy coaching session, like a consultation, then just email me at Jona@transcodes.com, or go to the website transcodes.com. Thank you for coming here. I see you again very soon, tomorrow, 12 p.m. for the energy update for week 8. Thank you very much. Thank you, Silvana. I see you. All right, everybody, have a wonderful afterglow here from this session and also the full moon. And remember, this is all about overcoming your ego stuff and stepping into what you truly want. Okay, bye-bye.